Good day, subscribers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Jeremy. This is the Financial Education Channel, and today it is Stock Market Weekly Recap number 15 ever in history, recapping the April 28th, 2017 week, guys. This week was huge. So much news. This is going to be probably the longest video ever in the history of the channel, literally today. We're going to look at how the markets did. We're going to look at some of the stocks that went up the most and down the most this week. We're going to look at some of the biggest news stories this week, and we're going to look at what we got going on next week, guys. So before I get into that, let's just take a minute to acknowledge that I'm about to record like a 30-minute video without taking a break, a water break, or anything. So to that, guys, I say cheers. So can't afford water. What am I thinking? I own GoPro stock. Let's check this out here, guys. So Dow Jones, what a great week it had. Up 1.91% this week. Absolutely out. That's an amazing week for the Dow Jones. NASDAQ even outperformed that. NASDAQ up 2.3% this week. Absolutely stellar week. NASDAQ's just having a strong year, up over 12% already. S&P 500 was the lagger of the bunch, and it was still up 1.5%. So a very good week for the markets overall, especially Tuesday and Wednesday specifically. Markets were extremely strong. We had several good earnings that we'll get to. They came out Thursday. That kind of pushed the NASDAQ up on Friday a bit. And so we'll talk about all that, and we'll talk about the main reason also why the markets went up the most on Tuesday and Wednesday specifically. That'll be our number one story we're going to talk about. So let's look at some of the stocks that went up and down the most. Grubhub, some of you guys might even use that app, has to do with food delivery, had a phenomenal week, up over 24% this week. It was green every single day, but that big day was Thursday, up 22%. Then we had Aaron's. Aaron's is basically a place that rents out TVs, rents out couches and stuff like that. They went up over 17% this week, so there must be a lot of people renting a lot of crap for furniture and stuff. Weight Watchers, phenomenal week. Look at this stock year to date, up over 82%. This week alone, up over 16%. Ever since Oprah got behind this one, it's just been up and up. I mean, I guess like if Warren Buffett or Oprah gets behind a stock, like maybe you should buy it, I'm thinking. Like, holy smokes, it's ridiculous. Build-A-Bear, this Build-A-Bear workshop, I swear this stock like makes the list every single week. This is like probably one of the best trading stocks you could possibly trade in and out of if you know how to play it. This week it was on the good side of things. It was up over 14% this week. I swear that stock comes on the list a lot. We had Under Armour, and we'll talk about their earnings here in a bit. Under Armour was strong this week, up over 13%. And then we had Twitter. I mean, this stock has been hammered for the last year and a half. They finally got a decent week here after earnings came out, up over 12%. So great for you Twitter shareholders out there. Planet Fitness, the gym, some of you guys might even go to that gym, up over 11.5% this week. Very strong week for Planet Fitness, who came public I think it was less than 2 years ago. It might even be less than a year ago they came to the public markets. GoPro, oh shit, I was dreaming that GoPro is never going to be on that list. And then we got some of the worst stocks here. United States Steel Corporation, down 26% this week. 26% United Steel down. Oh, that is an ugly one there. Time magazine. Some of you guys might remember that publication. I don't know if anybody still reads Time. I personally don't, but they're still around, and their stock dropped over 17% this week. They were possibly going to sell the company to somebody else, and I guess that deal fell through, or they could not make a deal with anybody out there, so that stock had a horrible week. We had Barrick Gold. Now, there were a massive amount of gold-related stocks that were down this week that I could have put up here. I just thought Barrick Gold would be the best one because that's probably the one most people own. I was down over 13%. Basically, with these gold stocks, a lot of times when the markets do really well, the gold stocks struggle a little bit. And then if the markets struggle bad or there's a lot of volatility, a lot of the times the gold stocks will rise. So if you see a really strong week like we had this week in the markets, gold stocks a lot of times fall, unfortunately, and that's exactly what happened this week to so many gold stocks, including that one. Clear Channel Outdoor, which is basically a billboard type company, they were down about 12% this week. Real quick on billboards, and then we'll get into some of these biggest stories. Like, why the heck would you advertise on a billboard? And there's customers I have that I've, lawyers and whatnot, that there are pictures that are on their billboards I did personally, so like I shouldn't just hate against the billboard companies, but I'm like, who the heck wants to be in the billboard business anyways? You got to pay so much money to be on those billboards. And then what are all the passengers of cars doing nowadays? They're not looking out the window. Oh, look at the billboards. No, they're freaking on their phones nowadays. Hell, half the drivers out there are on their phones, looking at their phones. So no one's paying attention to billboards anymore. Anyways, so let's look at some of the biggest news stories we had this week. The first one, and this is one of the main reasons the markets were up big on Tuesday, Wednesday. Trump has a new tax plan he wants to get done. Now, let's look at some of these different things. So first, we're going to look at the personal income tax side of things. So the current tax, we currently have 7 tax brackets here in the United States. He wants to get it down to 3 brackets. So about a 10% bracket, about a 25% bracket, 35% bracket. I'm around the 25-ish range right now as it is, so I would probably be in the same. The top rate would be 35, as I just spoke about, where it used to be almost 40%. So basically, most people would get a tax break here. The thing that really caught my eyes, and not a lot of people talked about this because I know it's popular to hate on Trump and, all these anti-Trump, people and whatnot right now, but something that really caught my eye that I really liked with this tax plan was the fact that it's going to cut massive amounts of these deductions, make the tax code a lot simpler, and then this, specifically, the standard deduction currently is $6,350 for a single person and $12,700 for a married couple like myself. But that would double under his plan. So if you're a married couple, you're going to have like $25,000 deduction, meaning basically if you're making under $25,000, you're probably not going to have to pay any tax at all, which I think is probably a good thing, because if you're making under $25,000 a year, what good is taking tax money from you in that type of situation? In my opinion, at least, I mean, that's like barely getting by here in the United States, even if you live somewhere where it's cheap. For 2 people, that's not a ton of income coming in. So I look at this tax plan, and in a lot of the specifics we still got to see as far as a personal income tax side. We'll look at the corporate side next. But as far as like simplifying the code, I'm all for that. Taking away a lot of the deductions and just making everybody's standard deductions more, I think that would be a good thing in the end, because a lot of people are just gaining the system who know how to work the tax system, and a lot of people get screwed in the tax system because they just don't know about a lot of these loopholes and things, guys. So that's just my kind of opinion on it. Now, on the other side of things here, this is the one that really pushed up the markets, honestly. This is a corporate side. So basically, right now, corporations, businesses, and whatnot, they pay around a 35% rate. He wants to cut the rate to about 15%, a dramatic cut. And also, he wants to, I believe, repatriation of cash into the United States. So a lot of companies are holding billions and billions of dollars on their balance sheets overseas, and they're not bringing it over because they don't want it to get taxed at a big rate. I've heard things like he might do like a 10% tax on that money, which would be substantially lower than paying the 35%, right? So is this going to go through, and that's the kind of one of the drivers behind the markets, because obviously if all these big corporations go from paying a 35% to a 15%, profitability is going to go through the roof, their EPSs are going to go through the roof, and valuations have to go up. So that's one of the main reasons that the market went up. Now, will these tax plans get through? Probably not as they are right now, at least. Now, if anybody, kind of knows anything about Trump, the guy wrote he might have had a ghostwriter write it, The Art of the Deal. Listen, he's not going to get the 15% corporate tax rate. The reason he does that is because his whole philosophy when negotiating, I think it's a phenomenal negotiating philosophy. You come in at a low ball offer, but the type of offer that it's not so ridiculously unrealistic. It's not like he's saying, I want a 5% corporate tax or 0%. You come in at the most possible realistic, but still way off rate, right? So then he starts at 15, other people are at a 35, and maybe they meet somewhere in the middle at a 25. We'll see if he can actually get that done and get people agreed and those kinds of things. That's a whole different subject, but that's a smart way of negotiating, in my opinion, because you don't ever want to start, let's say he starts at 25, at a 25% rate, and then what are they going to meet at that point? Maybe a 30, maybe a 32%, somewhere around there. So why not start a little lower and then try to meet somewhere in the middle, and maybe that middle ground's 25 and we get it down to a 25% corporate tax rate instead of 35. But the main piece I'm looking for is the repatriation of cash, these corporations being able to bring the cash back in the United States and invest that money without getting taxed at 35%. Because until that something like that happens, it's a realistic rate. It's not, the big corporations are not going to bring that money back into the United States. They're just going to keep that on their balance sheets, and it's just going to sit there doing absolutely nothing, guys. They don't want to pay that ridiculous rate. So that's the biggest story that caught my eye this week, and that's one of the main reasons the markets went up big on Tuesday and Wednesday and just in general this week. Next biggest story that caught my eye, Qualcomm and Apple having a big situation here. So Qualcomm yesterday slashed its current quarter profit and revenue forecast on Friday amid an escalating legal battle between the chipmaker and Apple. Apple has said it decided to withhold royalty payments to its contract manufacturers until the dispute is resolved in court. The payments made by Apple to its contract manufacturers are in turn owed by the contractors to Qualcomm in royalties, according to the chipmaker's licensing business. So, short story, form, simple way of understanding this. Qualcomm, they own a lot of key components that you use. I don't have my cell phone here, but that your smartphone has in it. A lot of key components, whether you have a Samsung, an Apple phone, or a lot of other chip makers. Qualcomm has a lot of patented things that basically run the architecture on how a cell phone communicates with a cell tower and gets that signal back and forth and whatnot. And no one else has that technology. Qualcomm has it only. They have it patented. So Apple feels like, and Samsung too, they feel like Qualcomm is unfairly charging them. Now, in most situations, this would not even be a case, because in most situations, right, you could just say, well, Apple, go to use another company, or Samsung, go to use another company. Who cares if they're trying to charge you unfair rates or whatever? But in this situation, since Qualcomm's the only game in town, for that reason, Apple has a case and Samsung has a case in this against Qualcomm. So we're going to see what happens here as time goes on. I can tell you the ones that are making big money on this are those lawyers. Holy smokes. They're going to make out like bandits on this, and we'll see who ends up making out in the end out of Qualcomm and Apple. But my goodness, that's quite a situation there. And now we got to get to the massive amount of earnings that came out this week. Under Armour first off here. So Under Armour went up about 10% on Thursday. They EPS, they lost 1 cent, but they were expected to lose 4 cents. So that's a decent beat there in the EPS. And revenue of $1.12 billion versus $1.1 billion. So they had just slight beats here, Under Armour did, but because Under Armour is one of those stocks that's been beat down so much, but it's still a company that's loved for the long term, the stock ended up shooting up. So that's Under Armour for you. A completely random story when I was looking up some Under Armour stuff here that caught my eye. Darren Rovell reports that Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas have backed away from Lonzo Ball 2 months before the NBA draft. Lonzo Ball, for those of you guys who do not know, he's like going to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft. He had basically a guaranteed $50 to $100 million shoe deal from either a Nike, and Under Armour, Adidas, but his dad wants basically to make their own brand inside of one of those companies and get a licensing fee and all that stuff for them. So it's a situation where I hope his dad ends up being smart in this situation and pulls it off, because if not, he just costs his son $50 to $100 million. That's just a random money related story there, guys, but it's like mind-blowing. Next one up here, we got Wynn Resorts. Wynn Resorts shares rise as a top street view. So Wynn Resorts, you guys know it's my second favorite stock of them all. Wynn Resorts shares rose in extended session on Tuesday. Wynn shares rose 3.7% to 122 after hours. The company reported adjusted first quarter earnings of $1.24 a share on $1.48 billion. Analyst survey by FactCheck had forecast for 98 cents of share of earnings and $1.4 billion. So they beat earnings easily here by almost $10 million on the revenue number, and then they did $1.24 in profit versus it was only expected they were going to do 98 cents. So a great beat. I'm going to talk a lot more about Wynn Resorts on tomorrow's 4 Stocks I'm Buying Now video. So we'll look a lot more deep into that quarter, and I'll give you some more stuff there. I just don't want to take up too much time. Microsoft here. Microsoft. So their shares did fall after hours. They had EPS that beat. So they did EPS of $7 70 cents versus 70 cents were expected, or excuse me, 73 cents they posted. They were only expected to do 70 cents. They did $23.56 billion in revenue, but $23.62 billion were expected, so they barely missed on that. So Microsoft has some exciting things going with its cloud business right now. That's kind of the main growth driver behind Microsoft's business right now, is a lot of the cloud things they are doing. Next one up here, Google McDougal. Google reported numbers, my third stock on the 3 stocks I'm buying video from last month. So Google, really good numbers out of them. EPS of $7.73 versus $7.39 were expected. They did revenue of $24.75 billion versus $24.22 billion. Last year they did $6.02. So they went from $6.02 doing an EPS last year to now doing $7.73. So they are a great growth engine right now. And it was impressive because of the whole YouTube ad boycott that kind of came in the March quarter, or excuse me, not the March month, which kind of affected things a bit, but we'll get to see how much of an effect that has, if any, on maybe the month of April, because I know from at least understanding a lot of YouTubers are still experiencing the revenue being down huge, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily because YouTube has lost advertisers, or if just YouTube's trying to be more family friendly, and a lot of the channels that were doing some edgy type stuff, you know, and maybe have tons of vulgar language in them or whatnot, maybe YouTube's just not putting as many ads on those type of channels, and they're putting it more on channels like the financial education channel. I don't know. So anyways, we'll see if that affects it in the next quarter. Amazon, and by the way, we'll talk more about Google on Sunday's video. Amazon reported first quarter sales and earnings that topped analyst estimates. So listen to this. Amazon's just destroying things. Sales jumped 23% to $35.7 billion, and earnings per share climbed to $1.48 from $1.07. Analysts were expecting $35.3 billion in revenue and EPS of $1.12. So Amazon just freaking killed it, especially on EPS there, guys. Very, very impressive numbers out of Amazon. You guys know how I feel about Amazon. They're taking over the world. I've said it for a while, but unfortunately, I can't get behind it just for valuation reasons. Bezos is like 4 or 5 billion. Bezos is like a good Amazon stock day away from being the richest person in the world. Like if Amazon stock went up, let's say like 7% or 10% next week, he'd be the richest person in the world. Who would have saw that coming 10 years ago? Who would have saw it? No one. No one would have expected Jeff Bezos to be the richest person in the world. And by the end of the year, he probably will be the richest person in the entire world. It's ridiculous to think about. GoPro reported numbers. So GoPro, and I'll talk about them more way in depth on Sunday's video as well. GoPro revenues were up 19% year over year. GoPro reported Q1 adjusted EPS of 44 cents. Analysts were expecting 45 cent loss. Sales came in at $218 million, which beat up by over $10 million. Analysts were expecting, I think it was around $207 million in revenue. Then the real impressive thing was Q2 sales. GoPro's expecting $260 million to $280 million. Analysts were expecting $240, so a huge beat there. So very impressive out of GoPro, and unfortunately didn't mean anything for their stock. Intel reported numbers. Intel did 66 cents of earnings compared to 54 cents last year, so very impressive. Revenue came in slightly below expectation, which were $14.8 billion. Last year they did about $13.8 billion. So Intel's an interesting stock because that's one that's had a troubled decade, let's say, or at least the last 5 years. But my goodness, that stock is, it's amazing to me to see the growth in Intel despite some of the challenges with PC sales and whatnot. Very impressive out of Intel. They're definitely diversifying beyond just PC sales alone. Starbucks reported numbers here. Their stock got hit a little bit, not too bad. They did EPS of 45 cents, which was in line with estimates. They did revenue of $5.29 billion versus $5.4 billion were expected. But same-store sales is where the trouble came in. They only had same-store sales go up about 3%. 3.7% were expected. That's 2 quarters in a row now that Starbucks has missed on the same-store sales. However, Starbucks did say on that conference call that things got stronger later in the month, and things have continued to be strong here through April. So we'll just kind of see. That's definitely one I'm keeping an eye on. And the next one up here, Las Vegas Sands. So Las Vegas Sands, they did EPS of 66 cents a share versus 62 cents were expected, so they beat that. Revenues came about in line. However, Las Vegas Sands, the only bad thing with them is they are losing some market share to Wynn Resorts, which I knew was going to happen. So, but at the same time, it's still a great company. They still beat earnings. Very, very well-run company there. Las Vegas Sands here. Las Vegas Sands reported numbers, very strong numbers out of them. They did EPS of 66 cents a share versus 62 cents were expected by analysts. So very nice there. They did net revenue of $3.1 billion, which was generally in line with expectations. Now, Las Vegas Sands, they are losing some market share to who? Wynn Resorts. They are losing some market share. I knew that would happen whenever you got the creme de la creme opening a new property. You're going to lose some market share to them at the end of the day. They are, but Las Vegas Sands, they still beat numbers, and they're looking to possibly open a Japanese casino because Japan might give a license out there for a gambling type resort. They might be the ones to win that. As far as other Asian markets, Adelson's looking at, who's the CEO over there, he's looking at Vietnam, which I don't know why. Thailand, I don't know why. But South Korea, that kind of makes sense. Build one right on the border in North Korea. Just could you imagine Kim Jong-un looking at this huge casino like right on the border? I don't think he would be too happy about that. And the last story here is North Korea ballistic missile test fails yet again. They have failed yet again on another ballistic missile. I don't even know what to comment about that. They failed again. That's all I'm going to say. What do we have going for next week here? AMD is reporting earnings. I know a ton of you guys that watch this channel are AMD shareholders. I know because when I posted the AMD video and I wasn't bullish on AMD, a lot of you guys hated me for that. But hey, you wanted that video, so I had to put it out there. But they're reporting numbers. I hope they do great for all of you, so you guys can all make a lot of money on that. Mastercard's reporting numbers. We saw strong numbers out of Visa. Will we see that out of Mastercard? The big one, Apple. Apple's reporting numbers. I'm going to keep my eye on that one closely because it's Apple, and I'm going to be watching specifically. I'm going to be looking at what are iPhone numbers, or is iPhone 7 selling as strong as it's expected? I looked at their numbers, and I think they're expected to have 5% revenue increase in this quarter. I think it's going to be a hard thing to pull off. I'll be very impressed if Apple can pull that off. I'll be very surprised if Apple can pull a 5% revenue growth number up this quarter. We'll have to see about that. Sprint's reporting numbers. Now, Sprint, it's an interesting one I'm paying attention to because they're doing some very competitive things right now that are kind of hurting AT&T and Verizon a bit. Those stocks are being hurt a bit from Sprint. T-Mobile's being super competitive, and Sprint and T-Mobile, the small dogs, they're just being very competitive against AT&T and Verizon right now. One I'm keeping an eye on, Facebook, one of the hottest stocks in the entire stock market. We'll see. I'm going to be looking for any type of numbers out of Facebook platform specifically, which Facebook doesn't really let those numbers out very much. They mostly talk about everything as a whole a lot, which is kind of frustrating because I feel like the Facebook numbers, if they just broke that out, like if they put Instagram over here and Facebook over here, I think the Facebook numbers are pretty weak, but a lot of times they combine Instagram and Facebook together. It makes things look stronger just because Instagram's so strong, in my opinion. So I'll be looking for that one. We'll see if that can stay as hot as it has been. Activision Blizzard's enjoying my ex-company there in King Digital. They're reporting numbers this week. And at the very end of the week, we got payroll numbers coming out. That's coming out Friday. So that may or may not move the markets. Be very interesting to see that, guys. So holy smokes, it was a busy week. Arguably the busiest week of the entire year. Ridiculous how many earnings there were. There was like a million more companies I could have talked about. I just want to talk about like the biggest and the ones I know you guys are shareholders of and those kinds of things, guys. So hope you enjoyed this today. I'm going to go take a nap after doing this video. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching today. If you just came across this channel, you may want to subscribe. We talk personal finance. We talk entrepreneurship. I'm an actual business owner. I give away so many business tips. We talk the stock market, the most of everything, including these videos every single Saturday we post. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a great day. By the way, quick story. This shirt, I bought this a few years ago. You notice it has like a bird playing cards. I don't know how well you guys can see that there. So it has a funny saying on the inside of it. The saying goes, the guy that created poker was smart. The guy that created the poker chip was a genius. Do you guys understand that?